Hello, Ultimate Steve here, and welcome to my speedrun attempt for Kerbal Space Program. This is a career mode real-time speedrun, meaning I'll start a new career mode with normal settings and attempt to plant a flag or just get a Kerbal to every single planet and moon that's landable, and timer ends when I return the last Kerbal to Kerbin. So you can see I have normal settings on and nothing is messed with in the advanced settings, and let's get going. I'm going to be doing the actual speedrunning part. I'm going to play it back at 4 times speed so that the video doesn't take several hours. So anyway, I just captured some contracts, and now I'm building the first simple science hopper rocket just to get that first initial little bit of science so I can unlock better technology. So I do the science, and I realize that I did it wrong, and I activated all the engines at once. It's supposed to be a very short hop, like the one you're about to see here, so that it doesn't take forever to return to the ground, because, you know, speed is key here. So I get all the science I can from that little mission, and I unlock the technology I need to do my next launch, which is going to be an actual suborbital hop into space to get the science that I need to do a Mun mission. The top stage of the rocket is going to have a lot of science experiments on board, and it's going to be liquid fueled, and it's like that in the shape that it is, so that it's not too aerodynamic. If it's too aerodynamic, it's going to not be able to slow down before it hits the ground. So I'm just around here fiddling because with these upgrades I can only have 30 parts and the vessel can only weigh 18 tons, so I have to fiddle around a little bit. 4.5 minutes in, I launch it. I do all the science. You're gonna hear me say that a lot throughout this if you manage to watch the whole thing, which thank you for watching, by the way. It means a lot. So I'm flying upwards, and I check the apogee to see just how high I'm getting. And the fuel that I have left is going to be used to slow down, because just in case the atmosphere doesn't, although it did, I'm really quickly popping back into the mission control building, both to upgrade a few things and to try and accept some more contracts. I did that a lot early on, back when like in the early game, money really matters a lot, so yeah. So I'm re-entering, and luckily I don't actually have to use much of the fuel to slow down. I was afraid that I would be coming in way faster than that. And I'm landed, and that completes the first successful mission to space. So if you don't know, there are 14 moons and planets besides Kerbin that you can land on, and I have to go to all of those as fast as possible. So I just unlocked some more stuff, and this mission is hopefully, well, in my mind, I had said, okay, this mission is going to go to the Mun, or however you pronounce it. It's a weird pronunciation, but I just call it Mun. Sorry if I offend anybody. It's basically the moon, if you aren't a Kerbal Space Program player, which you probably are if you're watching this video. So I'll just stop explaining every single little thing about the game. So this is supposed to go to the Mun and back, but unfortunately it doesn't really work out that way, because I forgot to extend the fuel tank of the upper stage. You'll see in a minute here that I don't really have enough fuel to land on the moon. And so I can reset the science experiments. I actually have Bob on board. He's a scientist, which means that I can't use SAS. So this mission was a bit difficult to do. So now I'm in space, and now I'm in orbit. Yay! So I go back to the Space Center again and try and get some more contracts, except they don't really show up. None of the moon contracts show up until after I get there and back. So then I go there, as you can see. We're almost 15 minutes in by this point. There's actually people who can literally go to the moon and back within 5 minutes of starting a career mode game. So I'm definitely lagging behind early game. By the way, the world record at the time of this video was about 8 hours and 6 minutes. So now I'm approaching the moon, or Mun, whatever. I call it those two terms interchangeably, so whatever. You'll know what I'm talking about. And a quick EVA to get some science. More science, more science. Science is really important this early on. So now, at this point, I realize I don't have enough fuel to actually land, so I just get as much science as I can, and then pretty much immediately head right back to Kerbin. There's going to be a lot of long silences in this video, so you can probably just skip a lot of it if you really want to, or you can, if you don't like my voice, which is a very real possibility, go into the YouTube settings, press mute, press speed ×2, and then just put on your playlist if you really want to stop. Like, if you don't want to listen to me, I won't be offended. And Bob Kerman is now back on Kerbin, 19 minutes into the speedrun. And we've got the science, and we're gonna accept a few more contracts here, as well as upgrade a few buildings, or maybe it was just one. I can't really tell because I'm watching this playback in the video editor, and it's going at like 4 frames per second, so it's a bit hard to tell. So here I am editing the lander. I accidentally used a bit of part clipping on the fuel tanks for the lander, but I usually do that, unfortunately, so it's not really that much of a... It's not considered cheating by a lot of people, but by some people it is, so it shouldn't really matter that much. It wouldn't really have changed the aerodynamics or the efficiency much if I just slid those out a little bit. So anyway, I'm adding a probe core to the top of the command pod now that I've unlocked it, so that I can take Bob along and be able to use SAS at the same time, which is nice because I don't have to take around a pilot and I don't have to take around multiple sets of science experiments. So I built the launch vehicle. This is going to the moon. And I think I wanted to hit 3 biomes. You can see there was a cartwheel there. There's a lot of cartwheels here. It's amazing how in Kerbal Space Program your rockets handle like that and can survive that. So first stage burnout. The second stage is going to get this thing into orbit. 25 minutes in. You can probably already tell by the title of the video, which I don't know what it is going to be yet. But this is going to be split up into, I think, 4 parts, which cover 2 hours in game each, and it's going to be 4 30-minute videos. Maybe plus a final one to like do review and stuff. So you can see there, I'm aiming for a spot on the moon where I know there's at least 3 biomes. There's a giant crater, there's the normal midlands, I think, and then there's the canyons. So now, unfortunately here, I get a bit carried away, and I mess up my suicide burn over and over and over and over and over again. So sorry, Bob, I just killed you like 4 times there. No, wait, this is 3. And, well, he didn't, yeah. And I think it's this time that I get it. And landed on the moon. So that's the first of 14 bodies I need to visit. And as you can see, I'm doing a lot of science here, which is, it's one of the more boring parts of this whole thing, just watching me click buttons over and over again to get more science points. So now I'm going back to the Space Center again to try and get some contracts and then upgrading a few things, which doesn't really work. The game gives you explore contracts usually after you do something for the first time, especially if you're trying to go as fast as possible, so they're not giving me the money that I deserve for this. So I've planted another flag to do a flag planting contract, and at this point, I think I'm going to the canyon at this point, so I can get some more science. And one thing I do is I go EVA and quickly refresh EVA reports, because it'll actually tell me which biome I'm currently in, because there's not really a real way to tell which biomes are which this early on in the game. And I've landed again, and I almost tipped over there. So, more science spam. The previous record holder, well, I shouldn't say previous yet, because you don't really know. Well, you probably know that I beat the record, but not by much. So the previous record holder, Kunjo Carl, he had optimized early game a lot more than I did, so there's definitely room for improvement here. Like, he was on the moon within like 5 to 10 minutes, and then he was building his interplanetary vessels like 30 minutes in. I don't think, like, approximately, I'm not exactly sure. So I got the 3rd biome there, as you can see, which is the Midlands. I go around searching for another biome for a while, but then I realize I'm not going to find one. So after a while, I'm just like, I'm just going to go back to Kerbin now. So that's the escape burn, and I actually almost run out of fuel trying to get back to Kerbin. Like, I have like what you can see up in the top right-hand corner, like less than 2 units of fuel remaining. So, and now I'm re-entering the atmosphere again. Capsule almost overheats a few times. And And splashdown. So, oh, except I didn't deploy the chute in time, and Bob died again. Bob's died like, what, 5 times now? Bob dies a lot. So then, the next thing I want to do, I've upgraded a few buildings, and I've gotten more technology nodes unlocked with the science points. Unfortunately, as you can see on the top, I'm running very low on money. And I don't like to do this, but there's an exploit that you can do, where you can accept a ton of contracts, as I'm doing now. And then you can launch a very expensive vessel, and then while it's in flight, you can cancel all the contracts. But there's money penalties for canceling the contracts, but your money never goes below 0. So if I cancel the contracts like I'm doing now, and then recover the vessel, I get a lot of extra money, which isn't something I like to do, but I was running really low on money, and that's the only time I ever did that. So if I were to do this again, which I probably will eventually, that's probably going to be, I'm going to start out the game by getting a little bit of science, and then I'm going to use the infinite money trick and also convert the money to science in order to quickly unlock the tech tree, so I don't actually have to do the science spam, which is allowed by the rules, I think. Now, as you can see there, this is my Minmus ship, and during booster separation, I accidentally destroyed 2 out of my 5 middle stage engines. Fortunately, it was still enough to actually get the job done. And I've slightly lengthened the 3rd stage, or the 2nd stage. The stages are weird when you have boosters. So, yeah. That stage is bigger. And I'm doing my Minmus burn right now. About 45 minutes in. And I'm going to land on Minmus in a spot where I know there's a lot of biomes, like I did on the Mun Moon, whatever you want to call it. In my head, it's both. I've said it's both like 3 times now, so I'll try and stop being repetitive. Again, if you don't like my voice, just do what I told you about earlier. Unfortunately, I missed my Minmus encounter by time warping past it, so I have to set up another one, which is a slight waste of time. But eventually I get it, although it takes a minute or 2. More science, more science. And we're orbiting Minmus. And doing even more science. Yeah, this totally isn't repetitive at all. Just orbit science, orbit science, orbit science. Now, there's a little, it looks like a small lake up there, which I know has like 4 or 5 biomes around it. But unfortunately, I went to the wrong one. So this one only had like 3 biomes around it, which it took me a while to try and find the other one, but I ended up just flying away. And I crashed again, so Bob's stranded. Yay. Sorry, Bob. And attempting to land again after I load the save, I tip over again. But after a while, I'm like, yeah, I don't really need the rest of the fuel in that bottom stage. I'm just going to decouple the lander. So before I do that, though, I try to accept some more contracts. But there aren't any, because the game doesn't want to give me contracts. More science, and then I try, like, moving the lander to the ice flats, and it doesn't work. So Bob is stranded again. Bob gets stranded again. And this time, I think Bob lives. Or, well, he survived, but he was stranded the last 3 times. So, I got the science from that biome, and I'm traveling over to the next one, except it, yeah. And I accidentally pressed spacebar in a couple of my capsules, so I have to do all of that again. I didn't learn my lesson, though, about quick saving often, as you'll see later, especially when I get to Eve, that I wasted like an hour at Eve because I didn't quick save enough. So I try to head over to these mountains to try and find either the slopes or the Midlands biome. I'm not sure which one I found. Midlands, yeah, I found the Midlands. So I'm landing at the Midlands and getting even more of that science, which will help me unlock the rest of the parts I need to do all of the other missions. Now, at this point, it might be worth mentioning that I had played a test run all the way up to landing on Ike and Duna. the night before I recorded this. And I had a piece of paper with notes on it that I had written down to say, hey, Steven, don't do this, or Steven, do this. And I didn't pay any attention to it throughout this entire speedrun. So over here, I'm going to the slopes biome, I think. If it is here, at least. Yep, slopes. And at this point, we are about an hour in, so I land. And I don't want like one 8-hour long recording on my computer, so I split it up. So there's like a few seconds where there'll be black screens occasionally as I'm splitting up the video. But I separated it by the frames, and I used the in-game timer to tell how many seconds I missed. So hopefully you trust me, and that's proof enough of my time. So here I am planting another flag on Minmus for a contract, and I failed at getting in the lander, and then I succeeded at getting in the lander. So again, I'm flying around, and I try to get some more science, because I think this is a different flats biome, but it wasn't a different flats biome. So I keep flying around, doing my excess of fuel, trying to find another biome to do science at, and then eventually I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go home. I don't care about getting more science. It's just gonna take more time than it's worth. So I send Bob home, and just the reentry goes normal. Normally, not nominally, whatever. And touchdown. Bob's back from space again. So I got 3,000 science from that mission, approximately, including the world first rewards and stuff like that. So I unlock most of the tech nodes I need for the next few missions, especially nuclear engines, landing gear, wings, that sort of stuff, all the important bits, extra probe cores. So the next thing is I need to go to Duna. Note to self, put an epilepsy warning in there because I time warp a lot. Yeah, I probably should have put that at the very beginning. I'll do that, because, when you're time warping on a planet, the days flash by really quickly. But anyway, so now I'm going to Duna. Now, I'm putting the science experiments in a bay so they're more aerodynamic, but I forget to attach the science experiments to an action group. I had them in an action group on Minmus, which saved a lot of time, but on Duna I have to repeatedly open and close the bay and do all that science by hand, which is going to take an extra few minutes. So this is the Duna and Ike lander that I'm building here, which is slightly different from the Duna and Ike lander that I made in the practice round. In the practice round, I didn't have enough fuel and I got stranded, so this time I added a bit more. But as you'll see later, I made the landing gear base way too narrow. But I also add some heat shields and air brakes here because it's saves a bit of fuel to aero brake at Duna. Another thing I have, or that I had, like during the speedrun, was a little piece of paper, well, not a little piece of paper, a whole notebook piece of paper with a list of transfer windows on them. I wasn't exactly sure when I would be going to the other planets, because, the missions take a variable amount of time. So I had like 5 windows written down for each planet in the rough order that I go to them. And I had windows like up to year 20, I think, for Eve, which was the last one I went to. But, yeah, so I time warped to the Duna window, I think. I did that earlier. And as you can see, the first launch of the Duna rocket fails as it flips over, so I add some fins and try again. And this time, I think it goes well. And poor Bob, he gets cramped up in a capsule for a few years, just a small, very tiny capsule. Yeah, you should try getting a rather large cardboard box and living in it for a few days. And that's what it's like to that's what it was like to be Bob. Poor Bob. So this thing is almost a single it might have been a single stage orbit, actually. Yeah, it was. So this stage is fuel left, which makes it really hard to turn it quickly. So eventually it runs out, and I use the second stage to complete the Duna transfer burn, and I do my fine-tuning here. Now, the thing about this speedrun is that there aren't really mods allowed, so this is like one of my first times doing interplanetary transfers without help, like in-game mods to plan the maneuvers for you. The only thing I did do was the aforementioned list of transfer windows, so I knew at least what day to try on. So during this time warp, I actually ran to the bathroom, so that's why it's just sitting still here, is because I didn't come back to the computer in time. So anyway, so I noticed that when I'm coming into Duna, I actually have an Ike encounter, so I think to myself, hey, what if I can land on Ike first? And then, as you'll see later, I realize that I'm going way too fast, and that the stage's fuel won't be enough to slow down. And plus, I'll lose my heat shield and air brakes for Duna. So, after testing this, I quick load again, and then just go straight to Duna, instead of trying to land on Ike first. I accidentally time warped too far though, so I can't actually get the science from space around Duna, so I have to go to the upper atmosphere science first. And luckily the heat shield and air brakes work just fine. So we're coming in, and I deploy the parachutes, decouple the heat shield, deploy the landing legs, ignite the engines, and promptly tip over stranding Bob. Poor Bob. Then I quick load and try again, and then I tip over again. I wonder how hard it would be to do a speedrun without any quick loading or reverting. That would literally be terrible. I think it would take me a few days. So anyway, I finally, eventually I try and fly over to find some better, like, flatter land to land on. And eventually, Bob lands successfully. But, you know, I don't know when that is, because I've only rewatched the footage once, and I don't remember. And nope. So, note to self in the future, make a wider landing gear, if I ever try this again. And Bob has successfully landed safely on Duna, so I detach the air brakes and do some more science. All the science. And then yeah, more science. More science, more science, 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 science. So now I go back to the Space Center and to Mission Control, and again, I try and accept some contracts. And I think I got one good one, which was to orbit Duna, which, you know, that doesn't make any sense because I've already landed on Duna. So I accept it, though, because I'll be in orbit again. And Bob is planted a flag on Duna, and aptly named the flag Duna. So next, I'm going to Duna's moon, Ike, and I'm doing some more science, and I take back off. The lander has like 5 main fuel tanks. The outer 2 are just drop tanks, but the inner 3 have engines. And in a minute here, I think the drop tanks run out of fuel. Just resetting the science equipment and getting the low space science for Duna. Just over an hour and a half in. Not bad for having visited 3 worlds already. Out of 14. So next I'm going to Ike, except I can't find a direct transfer, so I'm actually doing a burn at the ascending node so that I can correct my inclination near apoapsis. Because it takes less fuel to do when you're going slower. So that means that I can set up an encounter with Ike in just a few more orbits. And I think I do that here. And I actually end up on a collision course for Ike, which is alright. And just that's my dad coming in, so. And now I'm landing on Ike, which I also fail a few times if I recall correctly, because the outer fuel tanks with the outer engines actually run out of fuel before I can land properly, which means that I transition to a single engine during the landing burn, which is not good for timing purposes. Eventually, though, I get it, and Bob doesn't die. I mean, he's already died several times by now. So we're on Ike now. And we're doing more science. Yeah, the super repetitive stuff. But there's good news. This is actually the last time I have to do science on a mission, because after this mission I'll have enough science to unlock all of the tech nodes that I need for all the other missions. So I don't have to constantly do science for the rest of this series. Yay. So again, going back to the Space Center, trying to get some contracts, and also time warping back to the Duna to Kerbin transfer window, which takes a while. So instead of letting you watch a... never mind, I'll save that for later. So this takes... I actually timed it. At maximum time warp, it takes about 1.5 minutes per year of time, so I time warp for about 3 minutes, which is going to pass in about 45 seconds for you. I think I got up and went outside during this part, because I don't really want to spend 8 hours just staring constantly at a screen. So now I'm going back up, and I end up on a trajectory that intercepts Kerbin's orbit, and I fine-tune that while I'm in orbit around the sun. Now, unfortunately, the transfer was slightly off, and I was also out of communication with Kerbin, so I couldn't actually use my probe core's maneuver node function, so I had to eyeball it, which is not good, and I almost ran out of fuel again during this. Like, if you look in the top right-hand corner, 10 units of fuel, 9 units of fuel, 8 units of fuel, 7 units of fuel. So again, this one was really close, like the Mun Mission. And I'm getting the science from the sun because I had forgotten to do that earlier. And now I'm going back to Kerbin. We're 1 hour and 45 minutes in. 1 hour and 46 minutes in. Oh, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but the reason there's not audio from the game in the background is that my recording app records, like, basically all the sounds that the computer's making at the time. So, and, you know, I had a music playlist running in the background, and that would have been copyright infringement. Plus, you know, it would be sped up by 4 times, so, like, a normal song would say, like... Anyway, so I'm back from Duna now, and I upgrade research and development so I can get the super advanced tech nodes, including ISRU, which I actually don't end up using. I was originally planning on using it for Joule, but I ended up not. So I get most of the stuff that I think I'll need. I actually forget a few. And the next place I decide to go is Moho, which, if you haven't played the game before, that's the Mercury analog. So I start out with that, and immediately remember that I forgot the tech node that gives me the small docking ports. I have the big docking ports, but not the small docking ports. So I start out with a simple lander that will have enough fuel to land on Moho. Give it some landing legs, an engine, 3 engines actually, and call it Untitled Spacecraft Moho, because I don't really want to waste time naming stuff. So the first 3 spacecraft I launched were actually Untitled Spacecraft, and then I had Untitled Spacecraft 2, then 3, and then I think I went to Duna, and then this one's Moho. So I have the main mothership with the parachutes and the return module here, and I have the service bay, which is going to have the probe core in it, so that I actually don't think I need that. I don't know if I took Bob on this mission or not, but since I don't really need to do science, I can take a pilot like Jeb or Val. And I stick an antenna on there so the probe cores will actually work. And beneath the actual return stage, I spam nuclear engines with, I actually make it, as you can see, I'm putting 3 cores on so that the first 2 will burn and then transfer their fuel to the central one, and the middle one burns. Now, I went way overboard with the nuclear engines, which means that I think this one ended up being my most expensive mission. I could have easily gotten by on 1/3 of the nuclear engines that I have, because those things are expensive. Although, I still have a lot of money, so it's not that big of a deal right now. So I build a pretty big first stage. And we are 1 minute, not 1 minute, we are 1 hour and 58 minutes in. And I'm just adding reaction wheels so I can turn the mothership easier. And I put Bob in for some reason, even though I don't need any more science points. And 1 hour and 59 minutes in, I'm time warping to the Moho window. Except there isn't actually a Moho window. I'm launching at the ascending or descending nodes so that it's easier to do the plane change burn. Well, you know, that's irrelevant right now because it's almost 2 hours in, and that means that the episode's over. So thanks for watching, and bye!